Welcome to Neuro Stories, the podcast that highlights the people behind neuroscience at the Walton Centre. Together, we'll lift the lid on the complex worlds of neurology, neurosurgery, and everything in between, hearing fascinating tales of the incredible staff and services carried out in the hospital every day. Hello, I'm good. Is she in her
I'm
office?
Jan Ross, Chief Executive of the Walton Centre.
What is a day like for you then, Jan?
It is very different on a day-to-day basis depending on what the agenda is. So some days it's very internally focused. It's doing things within the organisation, within the Walton Centre, the hospital itself. Meetings that are about what we're doing day-to-day, operational things. It could be going out and seeing what people are doing within the organisation. Other days are quite externally focused. What's happening in Cheshire Merseyside, they're system focused. So I sit on NHS Providers Board as well. So I do spend some time in London, sometimes NHS England take us to London to talk about what's going on from a national perspective. So I suppose part of what's nice is that no 2 days are ever the same, and I think that's probably what keeps you motivated.
You don't know what's coming through the door. It excites you, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think if I knew what was going to happen every day, I could carry on doing it every day. I think the bit that I like is you don't know what happens next. And, you know, some of the times where you perform at your best is when something surprises you. So you come in thinking the day is going to be this, but actually there's an issue or a problem or something you need to deal with. I think they're probably when you perform at your best, or certainly from my point of view, and whether it's personality related or what, but they're the things that excite you more, the shift in focus, the change, the surprises.
Go back to the beginning for me though, because you started off your career in the NHS in nursing, didn't you?
I did. So I trained to be a nurse in 1992. So 92 to 95, I did my nurse training, traditional RGN training. So it only just moved into John Moores University, but it was a very sort of traditional training methodology. So it was blocks in college and then blocks of practical within the hospital. So I did most of my training at the Royal Liverpool and then some of the specialties in the different hospitals across the Liverpool system. It was brilliant. I absolutely loved it from the minute I started. I was so passionate about it, happy. I really felt like it was what I was supposed to do. You know, I wasn't one of those children who always wanted to be a nurse. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in life. I sort of fell into it and then never looked back really. I just loved it. I thought that even going to Liverpool, I didn't just apply to Liverpool, I applied anywhere that would take me and landed in Liverpool, and it all just felt like it was supposed to be. It was right. I had really good friends. I'm still really good friends with the people I trained with.
Yeah.
I ended up with really good placements. I enjoyed every single one of them. I enjoyed everything I learned. I wanted to learn and read more. You know, there just wasn't enough I could do to be the best trained nurse I could possibly be. So I loved all my training and all of my early career in doing all of that, building teams, being part of teams, having tough days. Some of the stuff we talked about before, you know, never 2 days are never the same. You come in thinking everything's going to be easy and there's an emergency, or so, you know, all of that experience was all what I loved every day.
Was it just like an opportunity that you saw and you thought, yeah, I'll give it a go?
It was definitely an opportunity. So as I say, I didn't really have a plan. I wasn't the most academic person in school. I struggled a little bit. The only thing I was ever good at was PE. I always wanted to be a PE teacher until I actually thought about it and thought I'm not actually very good at teaching, and it means you can't just do PE all day. So I was probably a little bit lost. I stayed on to school to do my A-levels, but didn't really have purpose to those A-levels. And I remember looking at prospectuses one day. That was probably the first thought of, I'd quite like to do this. I know it's hard, isn't it, to look back and think about it when you're so young, but I don't think I went to it thinking, oh, this would be a brilliant career. I think I just went to it thinking, let's try this and see what it's like. And then absolutely loved it. And there was no turning back. Like every step of the way, it was, how do you do more? How do you impact more? How do you improve in it? But it didn't feel like a career choice as such, but obviously it clearly has been.
It was like the beginning of trying things, and thankfully you found
I was willing to, you know, and I always am willing to say, actually, that's not for me, or fail at it and switch and do something different. But it's
hard to do that sometimes though, isn't it? I don't think I want to do this and having that move through to something else.
Yeah, it is hard to do, and I think you've got to be brave to do it. But I do think if I'd have done something, I still always think that if I'd have done something else, I'd have ended up doing this, because I'd have ended up thinking, actually, that's not for me, and I'd have found a way to do what I have done.
There's determination around that. Just keep going until you find that thing that you really love.
Enjoy.
What drives your passions?
I think they've probably never changed. It's always been about the impact and how can you impact on more people and more patients and more families to make things better. So, you know, if I think back to being a staff nurse on the ward, if you like. You know, you've got your group of patients. However many, I felt like I personally gave really, really good care, and my patients were well looked after and they were safe and they were, you know, everything was done that needed to be done. And don't get me wrong, there were days where you couldn't do everything that you needed to do because of busyness. To thinking when ward sister job come up, I really want to be that, because I want the whole ward to have that level of care and that organisation. And then matron's job come up, I want to be the matron because I want the ward next door, because it's not as good as my ward, to have that same level of care and those same standards. And that was really the drive of how do you impact on it, you know. And then a divisional nurse, well, I want the whole division to be at this standard, my standards this high.
You started the dominoes.
Yeah, so you know, every little step wasn't about, oh, I want my career to it. It was, how do you impact on more people and get the standards for more people at that level that you think is acceptable and good.
I often see you around the hospital, just nipping in somewhere, seeing how they're getting on. Do you think that kind of passion that you have for patients has obviously fed into what you're doing now? You know,
it is quite funny, isn't it? So I sometimes sort of almost have to take a step back, and, you know, when people say, oh, hi, Jan, I think, I don't know who they are, but they obviously know who I am. But I think, well, I haven't worked with you, but obviously I have, because I am working with them in a broader sense of the word. But yeah, you have to be seen in an organisation. I think that's what's really nice about the Walton Centre, is that you can be seen and you can pop in and talk to patients, talk to staff. You get much more of a feel for, you know, and I've always said it, no matter what level you're at, even if you're, you know, when I was a staff nurse working on one ward, if you went to visit another ward, you could tell whether that ward was well run, whether it was organised, whether patients were safe. And, you know, and I know it's a bit of a broad brush, but you get a feel for, is this good? Are people happy? Are the staff happy?
Compared to an email that you get about the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to sort of test that out yourself. So going and feeling it and seeing it and being there, you get much more of a feel for, is it right, and are people doing what they should be doing, or is it really stressed? Is it disorganised? You know, is it well led? Is it not well led? Are patients happy? Are staff happy? You can feel all of that. So it's important to go out and see and feel it yourself, and be there for people to see you as well and know that you're connected in some way to what they're doing.
And our staff are quite, when you do talk to them, they don't sugarcoat some of the things that are bothering them.
No, and you don't want that. You want honesty, don't you? The only way anything works, whether it's a marriage or a relationship between, you know, your team or your whole organisation, is honesty. If people aren't honest, that's why, you know, we spend a lot of time in the Walton Centre asking for feedback. Tell us what it's really like, staff surveys. And I know it drives people potty, but we can make a whole load of assumptions, particularly at a director level, of what people want and how people are. But unless people tell you that, and I think sometimes we get a bit carried away with those assumptions of, if we fix this, everybody will be happy, when actually they didn't really want that. They only wanted this small thing that was easy to do. So, you know, feedback is really, really important, and honesty in that feedback is even more important.
That feedback does get then fed into future plans. It gets fed into the services. Staff and patients can see that.
I think you can never underestimate how much we are willing to listen and make sure that that's part of what we're doing, because I don't know everything, do I? I'm just me. You know, I might have a team of people who've got different skills and capabilities, and some of them have got different experiences, etc. But things change an awful lot from, you know, we just talked about, I trained in 92 to 95. That was an awful long time ago. You know, I've not worn a nurse's uniform for many years. You know, things are very different. I totally respect and understand that. I might have worked on clinical areas, but, you know, I didn't work in neuro, so I don't know what it's like on our ward. So you've got to listen to the people who are doing that element of their roles. Equally, we've got to listen to the people we're asking to clean and what their challenges are. We've got to listen to the people who we're asking to work through HR policies. You've got to listen to the experts or the people who are doing that job on a daily basis to know. You know, we talk about it in all walks of life, don't we? What is the lived experience, whether that's in the role, whether that's in the way that they're brought up, whether that's in their, I don't know, when traumatic experiences happen in the organisation, you know, it's inevitable because of what we're doing. Then you need to listen to those staff and how they feel, and it will impact people in different ways.
We're going to do the quick fire round now. It's my favourite part of the
It won't
episode.
be my favourite part of it.
Totally unwork related questions.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
What would you be if you weren't a chief exec?
Probably a ward manager still.
Still be a nurse?
I think I'd still be a nurse. I suppose if you went back to my earlier days and said, what would you be? I'd love to go back and say, oh yes, I'm an Olympic athlete, but I think that was definitely a pipe dream.
What's your biggest hobby?
I flit a little bit with hobbies. So again, trying to, probably just because I'm getting older, I try and hop back to my youth and do anything sporty. So my latest hobby is outdoor wild swimming.
Oh, nice.
Cold water swimming, yeah. But last year I did a sponsored one and in March, and that was freezing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the latest hobby.
Favourite song?
Oh, I don't know. See, I do like songs and different songs for different occasions, anything by Whitney Houston. I suppose if I had to pin a song down, I'd probably say that Candy Staton and the Source song, You've Got the Love.
Favourite book?
Oh, see, I'm not a massive book reader, so I tend to either do trashy romance that I just read it really easy on holiday, but I don't very often do that, or something that I feel like is going to personally develop me, so on self-help books and work-related sort of personal development type things. I've got loads of them. They're very, very crisp and not very well read, I have to say. I listen to people speak and think I'm going to buy their book, and I buy the book, but I'm not very good at seeing it right the way through. I'm just not a great reader, really.
Favourite film?
I don't want difficult films to watch. I want easy things to watch, so I go with, I don't know, a rom-com or Breakfast at Tiffany's or something like that. Nice. Something nice and easy and lose yourself in it.
You strike me as someone who can't sit still long enough.
Yes, I'm not very good at movies. Yeah.
Favourite animal?
I own a dog, but I quite like, if I wanted to look at animals, I'd probably go with like giraffes and elephants and things like that, where they're quite
the classic zoo
majestic
animal
type things. Yeah.
Food you love?
Oh, I just love all food, which is a definitely not a good thing, is it?
That's my problem.
But probably more picky things. Again, it's back to me, probably attention span, isn't it? Like tapas and cheese and things like that.
Little small plates.
Yeah, I like all of that.
Yeah. Food you hate?
I don't really hate any food. I don't particularly like cucumber. I always think that I just don't know why. I just don't like it really.
I am with you.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, when they put them in a drink or...
I never buy it. I don't
in
particularly
a salad.
like it. When I had my children, they came home from nursery one day and said, we eat these round green circles and we don't know what they are. And I thought, oh yeah, that's because I never buy them because I don't particularly like them. That's because cucumber is
disgusting.
Yeah, and don't put it in my gin.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't be so uptight and so serious. I was always very serious and very focused and quite uptight and couldn't let myself go. I was always worried.
Who's your hero?
So I think what I like in people and why I would put people in the hero bracket is achieving things despite. So then, but then I've gotten better at, you don't have to be famous for that. So there's really...
beating the odds.
Yeah, so there's people that I'll go... There's a lady who I read a book to, Sabrina Cohen, I think her name is, and she was one of the first, I'll get it all wrong from a ranking point of view, but quite high up in the fire service, but she was homeless as a child and got herself through school and, against the odds still managed to achieve great things. I think that's the bit that puts people into a hero bracket for me, but you don't have to be famous to be that, because there's lots of other people I've admired over the years.
Something very few people know about you.
Oh, I see. I think this is a problem. I talk too much and everybody knows about me, so I'm not really sure there's much to know. Part of being a chief exec is how you then influence, isn't it? Part of the reason why I like being on the boards of NHS providers is their role is to try and influence particularly decision makers, policy makers, those which will inevitably have an impact on the Walton Centre. So it's that feed up, feed down, isn't it? I think as a chief exec, you're sort of that conduit between, like I've just said, the people who are doing the job every single day and what it's like for them versus the people who are making decisions about how they're going to do the job. There's a big void in between there, and I think good chief execs will be able to fill that void and be able to be that conduit between, no, that's not what it's really like. Yeah. You can write that policy that isn't going to change the way that, I don't know, patient care happens or the way that staff feel, etc. So you've got to have that sort of open-mindedness to try and influence the people who are making those decisions about what it's like for patients and staff.
What would you say are the most rewarding parts of your job?
Probably the most rewarding has to be feedback from patients when it works and works really, really well, but also feedback from staff when they feel content in being able to do that. I think what you really recognise when you get to this level is that I can't impact massively on that patient experience. It's the staff that do that. So if we can look after our staff and listen to our staff. So when staff say, thank you, we've got what we need and we're doing a good job, then the patient care is going to be really, really good. So one way that we recognise that at the Walton Centre, one way that is really, on an annual basis makes you feel like we're doing the right things is our staff awards. So, seeing those people, and it always makes me a little bit sad on the premise that you can only recognise so many people, but, seeing those people come forward and listen to the examples of why they've won those awards really makes you recognise, how good our staff are at doing what we need them to do, and therefore the patients then get exactly what they need and, pushing the boundaries from an innovation point of view. It's so nice to know that you're facilitating some of that environment where they can flourish and do some of that is the bit that I think is quite rewarding now at this level. That ripple effect of everybody looking and seeing how good we actually are and reflecting on actually everybody's doing a really, really good job most of the time, because again, and I think we said it at team brief this week, I'm terrible for what can we do better, how can we improve, and not looking at. And so I think the staff awards at least gives you that look back to say, and we did, a look back of last year in team brief at the beginning of this year to say what things have we done well, because we're always too quick to say what can we do better, how can we improve, and what's our key objectives for this year, what's our strategy, how are we going to, sometimes you've got to stop and go, we've actually done a really good job, haven't we? Look how many patients we impacted, look how many patients, from business case development to buying a piece of kit to, treating 200 patients in a year. Those 200 patients, that's brilliant, isn't it? That's really good decision making, and really life.
And you mentioned there about the strategy, 5-year strategy is coming to an end this year, and a new one will be formulated. What are your thoughts on the position, the direction of the Walton Centre?
When I became the chief exec, I was really clear that the strategy that we had wasn't fit for purpose anymore. We'd had huge changes in the NHS nationally, COVID. So we refreshed the strategy and were quite clear, I think, and had quite a lot of positive feedback and a lot of engagement on let's keep it a bit shorter. So it was a 3-year strategy this time on the premise of things were moving so fast. That's happened. So we know we've done a really good job of delivering that 3-year strategy and being very clear about the things that we wanted to deliver on. Now, with the pace of change, again, we need to be mindful of the NHS has changed significantly in that period of time, the expectation on system working, collaboration, how we improve things for population health rather than just what is within our remit, all needs to be incorporated into that future strategy on how we play our part in that wider approach to population health, inequalities, some of those gaps in services and access to services. So we're going to have to think a lot more around some of that in the strategy moving forward.
Yeah. What else is in your work bucket list that you want to get done over the next year or couple of years?
For me, it is about neuroscience care across that Cheshire and Mersey patch. And I think we've done a really, really good job as an organisation, clinically and non-clinically really, on keeping the momentum going with continual improvement around that, despite COVID, despite some of the other expectations and changes. So, we're nowhere near where we would like to be from a waiting list perspective, from a, how long patients are waiting to access the services, from combining some of those services and making sure that we continue to improve from an innovation and a research point of view. So again, recognising that the strategy has to be part of a wider system, really trying to hold the ring with where the guardians, if you like, of that neurosciences care across that huge patch, a huge scope of patients that we need to look after. So trying to make sure that future models really don't deteriorate that position, really, that we continue to improve and we continue to lead the way. We are the only specialist hospital in the country. We need to keep that momentum and making sure that the culture that we've got in the organisation continues so that we can carry on delivering that really outstanding care that, is recognised by CQC and everybody else. And, you've seen, Sam, some of the feedback we get from our patients. It's amazing. And I'm not saying we get it right all the time. We also get, feedback that we haven't quite got it right. And like I said to you before, we'll always look at, until every single patient gets it, we will always strive to be as good as we possibly can, can't we?
Yeah. I always like to ask you about any key standout moments across your career here at the Walton Centre or overall.
Oh gosh, I suppose from, really early on, people always tell you not to change. That is certainly one thing that has always stuck with me. I'm clearly quite an outspoken person who speaks my mind and has strong views on things, particularly when they are either unfair or not focused on patients. So I've tried really hard to stay true to myself and never change. And I think a lot of people have said that along the way, and certainly some of the nice feedback I get from people that I worked with us when I was really junior and very clinical is, gosh, you haven't changed, and isn't that amazing? I actually had a school reunion quite recently.
Oh, really?
People thought it quite amusing that I'm still the same person, which, I don't know if that's a positive or a negative.
I think that's a compliment.
I took it as a compliment.
Definitely.
That I didn't want to be a different person. Standout moments, I really was proud of being a ward manager, ward sister. Even more so than, I got a matron's post when the last Labour government brought in Let's Bring Back the Modern Matron, and couldn't quite believe that I managed to sort of bag that, really. I think I was probably about 29, 30, and I was sort of seen a little bit as a pin-up girl of the Modern Matron, and there was a bit of an article in the Echo. And because of my age, I think, and the fact that the Labour government had chosen this title, Modern Matron, it felt a very proud moment on the premise that, things felt good in the NHS at that point. There felt like there was money, we were making improvements, felt like it was going to change the world. I'm not sure that things quite panned out in that way, but it felt like a very pinnacle moment. But also from my career point of view, I never expected to be in that position, so I felt very, very proud. And then I suppose if you see all of that through, I then think, gosh, how am I sat here as a chief executive? I thought that I'd peaked at my career at that point of getting a matron's role. So yeah, there's lots of proud moments. There's really small things that happen that you're very, very proud of. Days that you survive where you didn't think you would, and patients that give you feedback, and all of those that, you've got sort of that personal pride in. But I suppose real key moments I would pick out is probably becoming a matron and definitely becoming a chief exec, because I don't think anybody believed that was possible in my lifetime. You just sort of get on with your day, don't you, day to day. But yeah, there is a real passion and a drive there to do the right thing for the right reasons, and that's, what stuck with me, and that's the reason for doing it.
Thanks for listening to Neuro Stories. You can listen to more episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can stay up to date with the latest news and events from the hospital on our social media channels, at the Walton Centre on Facebook and Instagram, and at Walton Centre on X. If you've got any feedback, email the communications team at wcft.communications@nhs.net. This podcast was recorded, edited and hosted by Sam Fleet from the Walton Centre's communications team.